The first thing I can share with you that I think is super important is to say the difference that exists within the path of discipleship. Because there are two paths. We have the path of discipleship and the initiatory path to be able to give it meaning. We will define this step by step. What would be those evolutionary levels that we have to go through to be able to access that inner reality? Then, first things first, the neophyte. Who would be the neophyte? What would be the process of the neophyte? Is an ordinary person who works, who goes from home to work and from work to home. And it is the only thing he knows how to do. Work, eat, do his needs, develop a family. If it is the case, and with good luck, have a vacation of 15 or 30 days a year. In short, he lives without realizing anything because he does not question anything. And that is the way we live. That unfortunately is how the majority lives, who can be from a worker to a professional, because generally professionals also remain prisoners of that reality, and sometimes even much more, because they buy what the system itself tells them, shows them. But this is already a superior level. What would be that of the aspirant? The aspirant is that neophyte who begins to sense that something is wrong in society, that something is not working, that politics does not reflect what it should be, that the economy does not reflect what it should be, and begins to reflect on all this, begins to realize that there is something that is not working well in society, on the outside, but not yet, looks inside himself, then begins to investigate, a little, just a little bit, nothing more. And then gradually, the aspirant begins to realize that there is something more, something that he does not see, discovers that there is a pyramid logic within the system, that at the top of the pyramid, there is something that is manipulating, that is governing our reality, that finally decides to confront us with each other, allowing us to make decisions for ourselves, without realizing that almost everything is for the benefit of a few. Unfortunately, they educate us for their own benefit, as if we were sheep, and through mainly the academic system, in which the vast majority of people are trapped. And the worst thing is that without realizing it, some people with luck sense that there may be something of a spiritual nature that attracts them. Perhaps yoga, for example, going from technique to technique, from mentor to mentor, from course to course, all this is very valuable, but only in this first stage. No one says that all this is wrong. It is part of the path. But generally, we remain trapped in this, without reacting, remaining prisoners of the comfort zone that it produces in us. But this is also part of the great mesh that they generate, without realizing that it is also part of the consciousness of the system. The system is, for me, the kindergarten of deep teaching. So there is a system that is manipulating us, managing society, and taking control of our own reality, which is 20 or 30 families, all powerful supermillionaires who are deciding for all of us. Investigate, please investigate, and see that this exists and that this is a tangible reality. Even if I treat this subject as conspiracy, which in reality it is not at all. That is what they want us not to investigate. They train us with the education they give us for this, so that we accept everything they tell us and take it as true, without reflecting on anything, without questioning anything at all. Because if you do, you will be frowned upon by society itself, even. So let's say that this is the first phase of kindergarten, the beginning of realizing all this. Unfortunately, they are delighted that we do not realize anything is what they want to keep us asleep. Permanently preventing the awakening of consciousness that is how it is to become aware that there is a prevailing system. That is why he is an aspirant, simply an aspirant, because he does not yet clearly understand what is happening in the world. Neither. Unfortunately, he wants to know, because he would not accept it as real. Either he just begins to sense that there is something more, just that he realizes that internally things are moving in an erroneous way. He realizes it, but he does not know what to do. Generally, the individual can turn to politics, both on the left side and on the right side, but without realizing yet that both sides, both the left and the right, are exactly the same thing. Being more of the same, we put ourselves on one side or the other, always justifying, due to some difference in belief, that the chosen side is the correct one, and generally taking the opposite side as the enemy. That is what they teach us. They educate us for this, so that we fight among ourselves, and they can thus continue their game, the game of manipulation for their own benefit. Then he begins to rethink whether the quality of life he is living is correct, since he begins to sense that he is missing something. That your business or profession or the way of life that he leads does not complete him, and he finds himself every day more unmotivated. He perceives that something is wrong, but he does not know what he cannot define what is happening to him. He does not understand what is happening to him or how he is advancing in his life with that discomfort that increases every day. That blessed discomfort is the pressure that his own soul and his own spirit exerts, crying out for its presence, not addressed by the neophyte. It is here where the need to make an important decision begins to activate and establish a true change. I always remember a wonderful phrase that the Master shared that was from Tagore, who said the river beats on its banks to discover its eternal exit to the sea. What does it mean, it beats on its banks? Well, that is where a first small awakening begins there. That is when the almost aspirant begins to realize that there is something more, that there is a third position beyond the opposites, that there is a way out of that crossroads, and that he has to start to know oneself in order to emancipate oneself, to discover oneself. Because unfortunately, at the moment, there is no school of life that teaches us how to do it. When the aspirant begins to realize and become aware that he has to transform himself into something more, that he has to know himself, because in reality, he does not know himself at all. Look at the ego of a professional. For example, when he is told that he does not know himself, how he reacts. Generally, he says, "No, I do not know myself. I know who I am and what I am." That answer, for example, is all ego. But he does not realize, he does not want to listen to that. He does not understand that the ego has the possibility of being a great disciple of his inner master, who is his own soul. Here, I introduce the term of soul. Unfortunately, it is generally seen as something religious I am not referring to. That does not mean that it is wrong, and I want to be very clear with this subject. But the term of soul must be investigated very well in our own interior, and in depth. Thus I would begin what I would call the first great key to the awakening of consciousness that would be located in a primary disciple. Now the disciple of who? Of a physical master? Could we ask ourselves, number of yourself, of your own internal master, who is your own soul after this? Only then can some process begin with a physical master. Or not that primary disciple, as it is well known, or as it is well called, is the one who enters within the ranks of the seekers of the light, of those who are seeking to know themselves, those who are seeking to get closer to a greater reality. Since they have to be better people, they realize and intuit really important things about themselves, and they sense that the soul exists and that they must get closer to it. Here, the process begins. Then we talk about the soul, but we know our soul. We are aware of it. We know how the soul is formed. What is the soul? What is the soul itself? About the first step, as I said before, for the awakening of the consciousness is the self-observation, focused on what we think, feel, say, and do. Why? Because what the human being does is think one thing, feel another, say another, and do another. Generally, the process that the primary disciple goes through is that of a seeker, but that of a seeker who is already emancipated from the common techniques that we know as the New Age, is emancipated from all the astral reality that circulates in the world, that is also very good in a certain aspect, and in the beginnings, it is a good platform, but that has nothing to do with what we are talking about, and I am going to be very strong and very clear with this subject, because, and here is where several detours generally occur, and of course not badly intentionally at all. There is always a very positive intention in whatever you undertake in the technique that you choose, but finally everything ends up closing at a point when we really go deeper, and that point is self-observation focused on what that you think in the first instance is where we should start. I know that there are people who, on this spiritual path, are marked precisely by these dispersions and distractions. There is a lot of dispersion and distraction, a lot we have, to look again at what is told to us when they talk to us about spirituality. Especially, we must observe carefully if the person speaking applies what he preaches, what he does in his daily life. If we will again be incongruent, another example of distraction is entertainment, or in other words, entertainment which is being permanently entertained through mass media that do not provide us with true value but only superficiality. They are confusing us permanently. And of course, they also confuse us through pseudo-spirituality.